Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Welcome to Managing Dental Drama, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I have been thinking about having you for a really, really long time, and we finally made it happen.
Yes.
We're actually in a cool little rendezvous spot.
Yes, absolutely. This is perfect.
Where we could get together and chat. So I want to tell the listeners a little bit about you. So you and I go back several years. We work together in a consulting format.
Yes.
And we still get to share some projects together here and there. So tell our listeners how you came to be in the dental field.
Sure. Great question. So many years ago,
We won't say how many.
Yeah, we're not going to say how many quite years ago. I was a school teacher and had worked in the field for about a year and realized, maybe this was not quite the area that I wanted to stay in long term. So I decided to branch out and seek other opportunities in the Metroplex because I had just moved to the area only a year ago and was determined to stay in the area and not have to move back home. So I ended up coming across a pediatric dental office in Dallas and did a lot of marketing projects with them, worked with their new patients a lot, and being that it was pediatric, it lended itself well to my education background. And that owner and dentist was amazing, taught me pretty much the majority of what I knew and still know about dentistry, gave me a lot of creativity, creative rights in doing marketing for that practice and all kinds of interesting stuff. And from there went on to other practices, general, perio, and so on and so forth. But that's essentially how I broke into the field.
It's always amazing that some people just fall into it accidentally,
yes,
like you.
Yes.
And some are like, oh, it's a family history. But I think it's always interesting, like going from education to finding that sweet spot with a pediatric practice, and you're like, okay, this works for me.
Exactly. It really was a nice combination of being able to use my creativity, but then also serve the patients, serve the practice in a business type capacity. So it really was a good match for my experience and background.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some great questions for you today.
Sure.
So we did an episode, I want to say several months ago, called Inside the Mind of an Office Manager. Mm-hmm. And with your managing background and your history in the field, I wanted to present some of these questions to you. So a great client of mine, I feel like, just went to town on these questions.
Sure.
So I'm going to kind of pick your brain on some of these information. So the first question is, how do you keep staff morale high? And just kind of specific things that you do. So as you know, I think the staff morale has always been important. Mm-hmm. I feel like these days it's becoming more and more critical
for sure
to keep staff motivated and happy, and it feels like we're not just fighting happiness in the office, but we're also fighting some of the unhappiness that can be outside the office as well.
Right.
So what are some of your tips and tricks for keeping staff morale high?
Sure. So I think it kind of throw this out there as an obvious, having a foundation of, a well-organized office with well thought out systems in place are kind of a little bit of the backbone. So while I think there are several things that can contribute to that really is helpful in contributing to a positive culture. Mm-hmm. And the culture that, because we have a good system in place, reflects a care for the staff, mm-hmm. a fairness per se, that is really everything's equitable amongst everything. But I think it's really just as important to really learn what makes each staff member tick, mm-hmm. per se, what motivates them, what's their work love language, mm-hmm. What would the best role be to ensure that staff member's success? Mm-hmm. How do I support them, so they feel fulfilled consistently at work. And so I think a lot of offices, whether it's practice managers or dentists, seek external applications like bonuses or rewards to help boost morale. And while those are amazing, I do love those things, alone are not always sustainable or the most effective way to motivate staff. So, I think going back to love languages, for example, I think it's important to determine what's this staff member's love language? What's the doctor's love language? Is this person a words of affirmation person? Is this person of acts of service, a quality time, a receiving gifts person, even physical touch, which is obviously not the same as what it would be in a regular outside relationship, but fist bumps or eye contact or a lunch or something like that. For example, I'm a words of affirmation staff member. And, I had a manager at one time who was more of a quality time love language. So in her mind, she did all these extra activities. We did all kinds of team building and excursions and lunches. So in her mind, she's thinking, I'm doing amazing. I'm killing it, doing all these great things for the staff. And it was great. It was wonderful. But very rarely did she provide myself or the team any positive affirmation or feedback. So she's thinking I'm going above and beyond. And while neither of us are wrong in the scenario, I'm sitting there thinking, well, maybe am I doing a good job? I mean, yeah, she's taking me to lunch and everything, but she never really says, hey, Amanda, you did a great job on that project, or hey, great job with that patient. So, again, nothing is wrong with either of those areas, but if we really learned each other's way that we are fulfilled or the way we communicate or contribute to work would really help. You could see how that could boost or potentially tear down morale. And this isn't something you determine immediately. There's not a love language test you can take per se. You learn this over time, or maybe even that is a fun team building experience. There is a love language book for the workplace. Maybe you do that as a team study. Determine, that hygienist, hers is quality time. I had no idea. No wonder she was asking me to lunch all the time, not turning her down. She probably thinks I don't like her. And that's the furthest from the truth. So those things can really turn understanding and communication morale around amongst staff and leadership.
Such a good point.
And staff.
And I feel like, too, it can feel like such a touchy-feely subject matter.
Right.
That a lot of our dentists or practice owners aren't necessarily predisposed to that type of
for sure
feeling. And sometimes our office managers are so driven by the task at hand and all that's on their plate that it's almost like I don't want to take the time to think deeply about that. But I think you're right. So much of it can come back to, are we expressing our appreciation in a way that my team members actually understand? And have I taken the time to, first of all, even think about it?
Right.
But, second of all, even gone further into,
Right. Exactly.
You mentioned something, too, when I first asked you this question, which was having really good, defined roles and systems. And I think that's really smart of you to say that, because I think sometimes when we think about morale, you're right, we tend to go straight to, do we need more bonuses? Do we need a team outing? Do we need this? So we go to very tangible things. And sometimes it could be that the morale is low because we've got poor systems right now. There's a lot of frustration. In my role, I don't feel successful.
Exactly.
And sometimes it could just be asking the question, have we thought about that before even getting to all the fun frilly stuff?
For sure. Absolutely. I think that's critical with a lot of staff positions, is even if you've got two young ladies or young gentlemen at the front desk and maybe they're sharing responsibilities, but over time they're like, well, I noticed so-and-so does this. Am I supposed to do that? Or I feel like I'm doing everything and they're not doing anything, and then maybe a tryst or a trife can become of that. So with well-defined roles, this is your primary task. These are your rollover tasks. So if Susie Q is busy, then you step into that. Just kind of a plan for the system of what's my role, what's my responsibility. These are the systems in place, so it does kind of make it foolproof that I know what my job is, I know what my responsibility is, and as long as I'm checking the boxes on that, I should be doing my job and fulfilling what my manager wants me to do.
Well, and I think you said something too, like not only knowing your own roles and responsibilities, but having this communication where you understand the person next to you's roles and responsibilities, because then there's not these false expectations of what they should or should not be doing, which can cause some of that tension.
100%. I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many times I've seen that where so-and-so thinks I do XYZ and they're only doing A and B, and when I explain to them, I understand that, but do you understand that they're having to do X, Y, and Z also? Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah, so that's why it seems like when you're doing all of these things, they're actually doing these particular really important responsibilities too. So understanding, I think, is helpful across
perspective.
Exactly, across the whatever department you're looking at, clinical, front, sterilization, even, you know, any of that.
Yeah. Well, and also too, it's like once you know, okay, great, I've got a good system in place for this person, she is checking off the boxes. That's when it comes into looking at, okay, now how am I acknowledging that she's getting the job done?
Right.
Does that mean, okay, great, she did an excellent job on her task list, so now I'm going to go take her out to lunch.
Right.
Or I'm going to say, you know what, Susie, you did such a fantastic job on this list. Look at, I love the detail you put into this, this, and this. So are we doing words of affirmation?
Right.
So just finding out, okay, then how do we reward the effort?
What fills their work love tank, essentially, and trying to continually fulfill that is helpful in sustaining that morale, which is a task in a dental practice.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Almost kind of focusing more on the individuals and the systems.
Right.
And then appreciating them in the way that they like to be appreciated. One of the other questions he asked related to this is, how do you motivate your star players on your team to stay and not leave, especially if they are at their peak earning potential for their position and there aren't any additional or new roles that they can move up to?
Sure.
So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. Again, I think we scratch the surface on what we were previously talking about. I refer back to getting to know that staff member, and if they've been with you for a while, maybe you feel like you do already know them, but you really need to build that relationship, fostering the trust and pride in their position. That goes to knowing what fulfills them within the workplace, because if they're maxed out financially, they're maxed out responsibility wise, at this point we just want to make this, of course, an enjoyable experience to come to work, but have a purpose.
Yeah.
Help them understand that your purpose, your role in this practice is really critical to us. And we want you to enjoy and see that purpose and how you are contributing and helping them, by showing a gratitude. So again, if they're tapped out financially, or maybe, some of the external rewards really aren't applicable, why don't you come have lunch with me back in the back? Let's just chat, see how your day's going. I know you said your mom had been sick. What's going on? Yeah. And I think just the care and concern one-on-one speaks volumes to a relationship and to some staff members. Whereas if you just threw a Starbucks gift card at them, that wouldn't have near the impact of that relationship that you're trying to bridge with them and continue to have them feel happy. And I think we both can say we know people who have been with offices for years and years, and typically what you observe are good relationships with the owner, with the staff, with the patients, because they really enjoy being there and serving the purpose of their role with the office.
I think also just valuing them in the way that you spend time with them, but also do they have the opportunity to give feedback in decisions? Do you incorporate them as a part of and even if they're not in a leadership position, but do you value their opinion enough to ask it and 100%. To really listen? I know I've got some clients that will do like anniversary type gifts, once they hit a 5-year mark, there's a celebration, a team lunch for them, and we really celebrate them. Yes. And maybe there's even, I've got one that does like a $500 bonus once they hit 5 years.
Yeah.
I've got one that does like a traditional like diamond necklace for their 5-year, and then they have a different jewelry type thing at 10 year. And so sometimes we can honor them in those ways as well, so that they feel seen and they feel valued just for their longevity.
100%. That's huge.
The only other thing I was thinking about with team members that staff that kind of max out is also one of my clients escalates up on perks and benefits. So like once they hit a longevity type point, like 10 years, they might do 4 weeks of paid vacation rather than the 2 weeks that everybody else gets. And so not that they're staying for that reason, but sometimes it's nice to be acknowledged in ways that's not
for sure
a dollar amount increase.
Right. It's an additional PTO time off for, I think that's huge. Or even, I've even known people that got the parking spot.
Yeah.
The favorite covered parking. This is Sandy's parking spot, even if it's just for, a week out of the month or a month out of the year. It's even, I even knew someone who got excited about that kind of stuff. So, even if it's a newer practice and maybe you don't have, it's an acquired practice and you don't have the funds to reward that hygienist that's been there for 20 years, you can think a little bit outside of the box and be like, Susie Q, I'm going to give you my covered parking spot. Or, if you need to use the private bathroom in my office, then
it's all yours.
Fine. Like whatever. Just, I think, be flexible. And that's kind of a silly example, but I think thinking outside of the box to make them feel special and just like you said, acknowledged that we're thinking about you. We appreciate the time and service you've put into this practice.
Yeah. And I think it can become a part of the way they view themselves and the value that they bring, that if we view them as a legacy piece in our practice and so prized and valuable, then over time they can start to, rather than view themselves as tapped out, they can view themselves as, look at the importance that I have
for sure.
With this team and with this patient base.
For sure.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think those are great ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is a good one. I know you'll have a lot to say on this, but when you overhear your front desk struggling with a conversation in person with a patient or parent or over the phone, when do you step in versus allowing them to handle it?
So that's a really good question. And I do have to say, I think it could be scenario specific. As a general rule, I do like to step back and let said staff member continue to handle the issue. And then for a couple reasons. One, I want them to experience it, try to correct it, change the course and do it correctly. And two, if possible, I don't want them to feel badly, like I've stepped in to somehow make them look silly, because that's, of course, not my intention, but some people can take it that way. Like, I thought you can't handle this. Let me take over. So I don't like to do that. If possible, I like to let them handle it, and whether they corrected the course or not, I might still pull them aside and say, hey, I heard, how this conversation went. If you could have changed anything about that, what might you have changed? And see kind of what they come up with on their own. And I might feed a few tips in there. It's like, maybe try this next time or XYZ next time, and allow them to change the course that way. Now, if I sense that some frustration is brewing either on the patient, parent side, or even the staff member side, sometimes I'll step in more so as a redirection of energy than to necessarily come in and correct. And again, depending on how frustrated we are, depends on if I go ahead and just take over completely, or if I just redirect energies a little bit and say, okay, I think what Sandy was going to help you with was XYZ, and kind of just diverting it and correcting it that way. I really don't like to correct in front of patients or in front of anybody, honestly, because I don't think that is valuable for work self-esteem. But I would, if it's becoming to where it's not a positive experience for either of them, I usually will try to step in and either kind of redirect the energy, dissolve the issue a little bit on our own. And if need be, say, you know what, Sandy, I think the phone back in the back, someone's on hold for you. Yeah. Do you mind going grabbing that? And they may think like, shh, thank you, Amanda, for saving me from, whatever issue was at hand.
This terrible situation.
Yeah. So.
Well, and I think you're right. Sometimes it's just, it's the smartest option to let it unfold. Right. As long as there's not going to be major collateral damage, we can sometimes unintentionally wound our employee
for sure
by stepping in because it says I don't have confidence in you.
Right.
And that's a hard. Once we do that a few times, it can be very hard for that employee to find their footing and grow in confidence.
Right.
Also, we don't want them to always be reliant on us to step into difficult situations. They've got to kind of figure that stuff out on their own.
Right.
So I think that's, if I feel like I could summarize on your side, it's default to that. If we can default to letting
100%.
them figure it out, let's default there.
Right.
When in doubt,
default
to that. And then I think when it is getting just completely, it's going bad.
It's going south, yeah.
Then we can ultimately, we've got some good. We're going to be having some fun background noises.
Yeah, got a little bit of Texas weather.
We got some good
hitting
hail.
us right now. Oh my word!
That's okay. Hopefully you guys realize as you listen that we're sitting in a storm.
Yeah,
for you guys.
we are. Yeah, we are making it through. It is fun. It is all good.
But I do like your idea of sometimes even stepping in to just change the energy of the situation.
Right.
Maybe even not even having to say anything. Sometimes just having a presence if there's a second computer or if you just need to step in and start cleaning up the room.
Right.
Or something that just kind of can potentially cause a distraction almost.
For
and then your team member knows, hey, I'm here.
If you need me. Right.
I'm right here at this computer and you can tag me in.
Right.
And so it's kind of a subtle way of showing, hey, I got your back without
inserting
like
yourself directly.
Part of it.
Yeah. That for sure.
So I think those are really, really good tips. Now, as far as coaching on the back end, I like that you said kind of after the situation has ended that you really open it up for, hey, what are your thoughts on it? Rather than immediately leading with, hey, I want to provide you with some coaching.
Right.
That can feel like they weren't heard in that situation. So I think giving them the chance to share their thoughts and ideas first. Sometimes they're going to be harder on themselves than we would be.
Right.
And so I like the idea of just opening up the floor for them first and then saying, okay, great, those are really good thoughts. Would you mind if I give you some feedback as well?
For sure.
So I don't think we let those situations go without coaching. It just means we've got to be very delicate with how we do it.
100%. Absolutely.
That's really good. Do you like the ability to listen to recorded phone calls?
I do. I do. I don't know that my team likes it as much as I do, but it really is incredibly helpful for me to glean information, not only about the staff members, but even sometimes practice metrics. If I'm noticing the trend for the last 2 months is the new patients seem to be, us closing those phone calls seem to be lower than normal. And I can say, that's when I've had Susie Q on the phone more recently, and I pull up those phone calls and I can understand, maybe I need to perhaps give her some extra support in this area to help her close the majority of those new patient calls. So, yes, I think those are 100% helpful in me understanding what their needs are to support whatever their particular role is in the practice, front desk, treatment coordinator, whatever. If I've got a treatment coordinator and suddenly like my unscheduled treatment plan goes from half a page to 3 pages, what's going on with that? Maybe I need to pull up the phone call list and see
how she's handling
what's
that.
going on with that, or maybe it's recare, just anything like that. So those are very helpful in general.
Well, and sometimes it's, especially as a manager, it's like you just can't be in all places at once. And I feel like phone calls or being able to pull a report and try to do some back tracing to figure out what's impacting those trends is so helpful, because we can't listen to every phone call. We can't be in on every unscheduled treatment phone call or unscheduled hygiene phone call. And so it is one of those areas that it's a valuable tool for the office manager, especially if we can then coach, again, delicately and encouragingly. I've got one team, we actually just did this. We actually so somebody on the team has access to the recorded calls, and she'll just randomly select like 3 or 4 phone calls a week, and then she puts those into an accessible form for the doctor and for myself, and she herself fills out an evaluation form. It's the same evaluation form for every phone call, and she'll go ahead and do her evaluation form. And then it's so helpful because I can see what her initial feedback is, and then when we get together as a team, we'll play some of those and then figure out, as a team, what did we like about this phone call? What would we change? And so it kind of goes through several layers of evaluation before the manager even has a say-so in it. It's like the team is evaluating it before we even. And it's such a part of their culture that it's not like, of course people get nervous to hear their phone calls, but it's not like, oh, I'm pulling out this one phone call and we haven't listened to any in a year.
It's a safe environment. It's a non-judge. Everyone, we're all friends here. We're family. Let's just see how we can support and help.
Yes.
For sure. That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I feel like I'm at a stopping point. I've got more questions for you, so I may just have to stop and start a new episode here.
Awesome.
Because otherwise we're going to run over time.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Thank you for answering these questions.
Of course.
The storm,
I know. We made it to the other side.
You stayed so focused in spite of the hail.
Hey, you know what?
That's a manager on display.
Yeah,
right
that's dental right there. You just got to make it. You got to make it.
Oh, my goodness.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.